Hi everyone, this is Dr. Raquel Butler from Integrated Veterinary Therapeutics.
And Sophie Vandenberg from Equine Postulate. And we welcome you to the Equine Functional Posture Podcast, your ultimate source for insights into the influence of functional posture on biomechanics, health, and overall well-being of horses.
Whether you're a seasoned equestrian, an equine professional, or simply a horse enthusiast, this podcast is designed to help you understand the critical aspects of functional posture.
Tune in each week as we discuss practical tips, delve into expert interviews, and explore the latest research in the impact of functional posture on equine anatomy, physiology, movement, and more.
Let's create a world where we empower our horses to be in a mental, emotional, and physical balance. Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode. We're going to talk about carrot mobilisations, mistakes and challenges, because I'm doing a lot with Ellie at the moment and it's actually something that I'm coming across. So just before we jump in today though, I wanted to let you know about the Equine Functional Posture course that is currently open for enrollment, and it's beginning on the 26th of Jan, 27th of Jan. So jump on, we're going to talk a lot about that in this podcast, but every podcast really relates to the course, and it's invaluable to improve your observation skills and your tools and knowledge to help your horses. So how are you today, Soph?
Very well. Yes, this is an important topic because this exercise gives so much value to lots of different parts of the horse's body, stretches or carrot mobilizations. So just giving people the ability to be better informed about how to do the exercise and be able to see if the exercise isn't going as well as you planned.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people are told, we'll just do carrot stretches, and is actually a lot of information to take in if you've never done them before. And you think, oh, that's easy because practitioners make it look easy. Like when I do a carrot mobilization with a horse, and I'm sure you're the same, it looks simple. The horse does it really well. And then I come back and then the owner says, if the owner says to me, the horse is doing the carrot mobilizations well, I'm like, show me. Because 9 times out of 10, if the owner thinks they're doing it well, that horse is often cheating in some way, and they think they're doing it well because the horse is going a fair way, but they're missing little bits and pieces. And I'm sure that you figured out by now with the podcast that I'm pretty anal about the little pieces, because they are what makes the biggest differences, and that's what gives you continuous improvement every time. And one thing is, if you're not getting continuous improvement every time and your horse is, still coming to the same level, still having the same struggles, then you need to sit back and ask, why? Because, yeah, every time that you do I'm doing them with Ellie at the moment, and she's really struggling with them. She's had a long-term disconnect to her pelvis and her core from a number of injuries. And I probably haven't really implemented them that much because they were difficult. She was not interested. She had no mobility. She couldn't go very far. And so I felt like they weren't actually, there was no function in it. And so I wasn't doing it. But now she's had some session treatments and different things. And what I'm noticing is every day she's got better, but it's taken her 5 days of consistency for me to actually see the spine start to become involved in it. So we've had improvements every day, but and that's where, when you know what you're looking at, you improve those observation skills, and then you get more feedback, and then you can go, oh, yeah, actually this is happening or that's happening. I wonder how I can work with that. So, yeah, why else are we talking about it?
Because we're often using tools on the ground. So often the greater aim or the greater scheme is to have a better way of going, a better posture, a better system of movement for the horse. And so we use tools, we use mobilizations, all kinds of exercises on the ground, and also sometimes when we're in the saddle to improve those ways of going because we want to influence their body. And so mobilizations are another way that we get to influence their body. And what we're going to think about is how the way that we do things carries over into the biomechanics of motion. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is just a reflection of how the body moves well and making sure that your stretches are a representation of that movement so that you're getting, like you said, a positive improvement every time. Because if we're doing things like, say, stretches that don't prioritize spinal alignment, then you're not really improving your spinal range of motion and alignment. So we want to be targeted and we want to be accurate in the way that we're doing things.
Yeah, and then like you said, it will then flow through to other areas. So like when you're seeing consistent improvements within the mobilizations themselves, you'll start to see consistent improvements in your horse's paddock postures or the way they feel when they're being ridden or the way they're able to carry themselves in groundwork. Like there'll be a flow on effect of it. And that's also what you're looking for. Like if that's not the case, again, you're asked, well, like, why am I doing this exercise? Like, there's got to be some value in it for your horse, for you to make it a priority. Otherwise, if it's not obvious what it's doing for your horse, then it becomes a bit challenging to keep doing it. So, and it's also really easy to get it wrong because there are like images that are circulating and things where I've seen that it's not the way I would do it. And I have my reasons for that. Like, I'm not just saying, oh, well, that's wrong. It's like, well, the reason that I, think that it could be better is because when I, see it this way, this is what I see. And when I see it done what I think is correctly, there's improved like function through the body. So, I don't, that's how I kind of reason things in my mind is like, and I practice it myself with my own horses and my clients' horses, and I see the improvements when people are doing it how I think is optimal function and how people are doing it when it's not optimal function. And like it's chalk and cheese in terms of how the horse changes, from session to session for me.
Absolutely. And some of the common stretches that you do see, like there, we see a lot of images. You can just, all we have to do is Google horse stretches, etc. But the common ones that you often see are the like the thoracic flexions. So basically when the head goes down around towards the knees to toes area. So you like, and you sort of are getting this big neck flexion.
Yeah,
There's
so
also
some people call it chin between the knees, nose to toes, chin between the fetlocks, different descriptions of it.
different ones. You've also got your lateral head and neck stretches. So that's when the horse is standing with their the head and neck forward, and then you're asking them, luring them with a licket or a treat or something. Sometimes you don't use a treat, you just might use your arms and guide them around, but you're getting them to bend their head and neck around in a sideways stretch. There's also a continuation of those. People will get their horse to bend around to the girth or towards the point of the hip. And one that we really believe is very valuable is an extension stretch. And so that's one that is taught in the equine functional posture course, and I don't really see it many places or anywhere else, but it's essentially getting your horse to lengthen and open through the whole body in a way that engages the pelvis and allows them to stretch under the neck. So they lift their head out and forward. And so these are some common stretches. They are, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to add like these common stretches we go through in the equine functional posture course. We help people with the execution of them. And I also want to reiterate that it's not about getting to a particular place. So it's not about the horse getting to the girth or the hip or the wherever your desired, between the front legs. Like that is not the aim of these stretches or lengthenings, depending how you're applying them. The aim is the quality of that motion. And it's not about, I think a lot of people go, yeah, my horse does it really well. And they show me, and the horse, goes all the way around. But then when we look at the quality of that, it actually can go like a quarter of it with correct function and alignment and awareness and all of those things. So the success of these exercises is not how far the horse can go. I really want to reiterate that.
It's a really good point. So if we talk about challenges that pop up for people when they're doing the stretches, what are some things that you commonly see?
Yeah, well, I can actually talk about a few of these that are happening with Ellie right now.
Yes.
And the first one that she presented was bending her front leg, so particularly on one side. And sometimes it's because you t accidentally touch that front leg and they think that that's actually what they're meant to do. But other times it's because they don't have the ability to lift the thoracic sling and open the spinous processes or lift the rib cage or, open the ribs, or they don't have the
This
like
is
the
talking about the chin to fetlocks or nose to toes stretch.
when they're taking their head down between their legs. And so a common one that we'll see is the bending of the leg. And so that's what Ellie was doing. And Ellie's doing it because she doesn't want to, well, she's unable to open up through her back and lift through her core. Like that's a big problem. So that's one. And so bending of the legs, bending of the front legs. From a functional perspective, I believe that they shouldn't do that, that the front legs should stay vertical, straight, and evenly balanced. And the back legs also should be like that. So sometimes you'll see a horse that's resting a back leg, and this is where your awareness is super important because you want to be aware. Yep, I've started my horse off in a good position. They're weight bearing on all four legs in an even way. So they might rest a hind leg, and when they rest a hind leg, I'm like, oh, what's pulling there to make them rest that hind leg? So the legs are super important. And another one with the legs is that they lean back a little bit. Now, this one is tricky because you really think they're doing a good job, you know, because they can go further when they do this. So you think, oh yeah, like we've got this. And so today, that's what Ellie did. She hadn't been doing that, but today, they're experimenting. They're like, well, how can I? Obviously, they want me to go a little bit further, so how can I get to that treat some way? And so today I noticed her front legs went beyond the vertical. So they look like so this is again the nose to toes or chin between the knees or however you want to call it. And so it's like they suck back, and that means that the front legs are out in front of them. And then they do it from that position. And then it's again another kind of avoidance tactic that when they do that, they can kind of reach further without actually properly lifting through their back. And I encourage you, we were doing it before this podcast. We were down on all fours and we were feeling it with our arms, bending one arm. What happens? Where do I feel the tension? Like when I'm balanced, it's like doing the cat cow. How does that feel through your spine? Then try and do the cat cow with one arm bent. What happens to your spine? What happens to the fascial pull? Like it's a really good thing to feel it in your own body. So I've talked about the legs and the things that I see in the, oh, one more thing with the legs, and then you can go into some other areas. Um, the lateral one with the legs is I'll often see people getting them to come around a bit far and they offload the outside front leg. So like they kind of leaning off and then this front leg is not really loaded anymore. And so when you're doing that, what they can do is they can kind of shift their neck over without bending. So if they stay properly loaded on both front legs, there's more bend that happens through the neck and through the body. And this is one you can do as well, like on all fours. So you get on all fours and then you do a side bending exercise, start with the neck and then side bend into it. And then offload and see what happens. You can get further, but you lose correct bend and alignment. And so you're not getting the same stretch, you're not getting the same lengthening, you're not getting the same continuation through the body. So you really want to look at those limbs and say, are they all balanced? Is there even weight distribution between the four limbs? What
And
else?
I just wanted to bring it back to our earlier points about the fact that we want to bring the biomechanics into motion. So if you're asking your horse, like just to relate why it's so important again, if you want to ask your horse into a nice bend in the corner of the arena, and you're expecting them, because you've been doing your stretches, to have the range of motion where they should be able to easily hold a bend and keep control of that outside front, or wherever, like when you're doing your exercise there, and you say you've realized that when you bend your head around and you offload your leg, that there isn't really one, you lose a little bit of tension on that structure. So fibers, muscle fibers and other kinds of soft tissue fibers, and also fascia, responds to the forces placed upon it, gentle and otherwise. So you're basically gently asking the body to adjust its structure to allow for range of motion in a direction and allow for fibers to lengthen and contraction in a direction. So when you go into a corner and you're trotting your horse, you have been trying to prime them with your stretches so that when you hit that corner and you ask for a little bend, the tissue is able to expand and contract and to hold stability and to hold good quality motion going around. And then you wonder why, oh, my horse keeps falling into their shoulder. But if you had the correct stretches, which then you might do some stability exercises, in which case they're really good quality because you had the tissue primed and ready because you've done the mobilizations well. So there's a real flow-on effect, and we're trying to take the biomechanics into motion.
Yeah, and you could then pick those things up. Like you can start correlating things there, like go, oh yeah, like that bend that way doesn't feel as good. Or like you said, drops the outside shoulder, or drops on the inside shoulder, or overbends through the neck or whatever. Yeah, I noticed that in my mobilizations. Interesting. I've now got two things that are adding up to, a potential restriction or functional issue going on. Maybe I should look at that a bit more closely or mention it to my body worker or, work on some other exercises to figure out where that's coming from. So, yeah, they give you a lot of information if you start thinking about how everything is connected.
Connected, yeah. So a few other challenges that pop up, maybe more so through the body. So, or, the way the horse might behave. One is going to be twisting through the head and upper neck. See that really commonly, or it's very obvious when you're doing those lateral stretches. So when you ask your horse with a little licket or a carrot or something to bend around, you might start it straight. So like start with the head in the middle, and then as you bend around out to the side, you'll see that they'll do this thing where they twist their head. And so what we're aiming for is to have a straight line from the pole all the way down to the nose, and that stays vertical the whole time. And you'll see they start tipping their head as if they're tipping water out of their ear. And so at that point, you want to ask, how can I improve the quality of this stretch? Because for some reason, whether it's where I'm placing my hand and what I'm doing, or because the horse has a limitation, we've ended up disengaging our stretch from being a true lateral stretch to then being a combined rotation, like often different kinds of stretch. And so you'll often find that it's different on both ways. If you have a horse who'll always twist, just a little bit different, but you really want to be taking the stretch back to where they're not going to twist, which we're going to talk about in a little bit further. Also tips to help rectify stretches, but that's one thing you often see. And you might even see, like you said, they'll do that. They'll shift all their weight to one leg, or they will twist kind of through the base of their neck, or they'll only bend at one segment. So they'll kind of like look like they've bent halfway up their neck, kind of like a right angle, rather than it being a beautiful, smooth curve all the way around. Another thing you might see, and also you can twist in other stretches too. Like you can you see a lot of twisting when they're doing the nose to toe stretch. It's just less obvious because you're all convoluted after you've bobbed down next to them. Another one is stepping backwards. So a lot of horses will take a step backwards rather than stay square. So that's usually when maybe you've taken the head to the side, like in a lateral stretch, and they'll pop that near side shoulder back. They'll take a step back to allow their head and neck to turn around. Or maybe when you ask them to go into an extension stretch, because they don't have the level of stretch yet, they'll take a hind leg and disunite. So they'll take one leg and they'll either step it backwards or forwards, as the pull through the body isn't quite right for them. So that's another reason why we want to be doing it correctly, so that you can keep the right level through the body. Did you have a comment about the
Yeah,
stepping?
but especially so the other one I see stepping backwards is the nose to toes, like they'll step backwards instead of lift. And also when you're coming around to lateral bend, they'll like shift the hind quarter over. So like, and then people say, oh, well, we just do it up against a wall or just do it up against, no, no, don't do it up against a wall. No wall behind the horse, no wall beside the horse. The horse needs to be able to do these in the open with the least, um, what's the word? With the least
Amount of force or restraint?
Yeah, restraint with the least restraint possible. So it's not an answer. It's like the belly lift podcast that we talk about. It's not an answer to use a hoof pick. It's not an answer to use a wall. Because if you have to use a wall, your horse is communicating to you that you're asking too much. So that's not an answer with stepping backwards. So instead, revise your technique.
Definitely. And our last comment about challenges is that often the horse will lose interest. And so I hear that from a few people. Oh, my horse just doesn't like, she just immediately gets distracted and doesn't want the carrot. It's usually because they have been asked too far, and and then they'll be like, oh no, I'd rather just, it's not worth it for me, for the horse. They're like, no, I don't need to go to that level of effort, or I can't stretch that far. So I'd rather just, if it's not possible for me. And often, that's when you accommodate and you just need to show them, I can come back to the level that you're at. Otherwise, they'll just be like, well, I can't do that. It's not comfortable for me. It's not worth it. And so another thing that you'll also see around that issue is they'll snatch for the carrot. So instead of being able to reach and hold a level of stretch, they'll kind of lunge the last bit. It kind of looks like they've either like, it's a jerky motion, like yeah, it's really obvious when you see it. They're just kind of like throwing their head and neck at you, trying to grab the carrot. That's how you get bitten. Ask me how I know. um, been there a few times. And then you'll also see a quick rebound, which is a really big thing to look for. So if your horse will kind of like get to the point, but then immediately have to bring their head and neck back to straight, or they'll bring their head down to their toes, but they immediately have to come back up like they're ricocheting, then you know that that is not a sustainable stretch for them.
Yeah, that's a big one. Like, and that's something I noticed with Ellie the couple of days ago. So when she was doing the lateral one, she was coming round, get the treat, go straight back. But then after a couple of days, she's on one side, especially, she stayed. Like she'd had the treat. And that's what I'm looking for in all of the exercises is that the horse will get to a point where they get the treat and they're kind of like, oh, is there any more down there? Oh, is there any more over there? Like they're so comfortable in that position that they're happy to stay. And like often those horses, you can just scratch their nose and they'll come around this way and they'll do all the exercises just for a little scratch on the nose because it's comfortable for them and they actually, enjoy the process rather than, oh, I just have to get the carrot. Like Jelly used to be the rudest horse when it came to carrots. Like he did all the things that we just listed with the challenges. So he would move around, he would step backwards, he would bend his front legs. He would rest a hind leg. He would go offset with his hind legs. He would snatch the carrot quickly. Like he quickly rebound. He didn't lose interest much. Unless I told him off too many times. Then he'd be like, fine, I'll just guess I'll go. But, he was so rude. And the reason that he was so rude was because he has an underlying muscle condition, the myofibrillomyopathy, and his muscles were so tight that all of this probably caused pain and discomfort for him. And he didn't have the functional range of motion to also do the exercise. And he loved carrots. But now, like, he is so polite. Um, he nudges and licks and like he's very thinking about the exercises now, whereas he used to get really anxious, and that's another actual challenge where the horse starts to get quite like, oh, well, I don't know what you want then. And he'd get really anxious about it. And then I'd be like, dude, 4 feet on the ground, just stand, like, whew, breathe. So we had to do a lot of just like calm, relaxing, slow, persistence, keep yourself connected to your body. Don't get yourself all anxious, you know? So, and I understand that because I was just thinking before, right? Sometimes my back hurts so much that if someone asked me to pick something up off the floor, which is equivalent to like doing nose to toes, it's not functionally possible for me, right? And even if they put a piece of chocolate there, like there's two
Yep.
options. I would quickly grab the chocolate because I
Yeah.
really want the chocolate, or I just say, no, it's not even worth the chocolate, right?
I'll go and
So
get my own from the fridge.
yeah, like so, and I get it when that fascia, like I felt it through my own body when that fascia is just like, you know, people who try to reach your toes and you just can't do it. Like you can reach your knees, and then after you warm up for a bit, like maybe. But if you practice it every day, then every day you're gonna be better and bit better. Like when your fascia or your muscles is just like so tight, and if you keep going beyond that, your body just says, whoa, I'm just gonna protect myself. Like this is not good for me. It's not promoting a lengthening. And so it actually gets tighter if you just keep going beyond it. It's a protective mechanism. So it's really important to understand these challenges for your horse.
Definitely. So if we think about what's happening in the body, like a bit more of a think about function or anatomy, what is happening underneath the skin?
I think the biggest thing is the spinal alignment gets lost, you know. So when they're
Could you
twisting their
could you just explain like even just a sentence about spinal alignment? Why is it so important?
yeah, so we want, you know, like the neck to stay in front of the with like in front of the withers and the thoracic, and we want that even when it's through bend that the vertebrae remain in alignment in bend, so there's not like one that's rotating too much or one that's twisting too much or one that doesn't move at all, because if that's the case, so there's a restriction somewhere in those vertebrae, then it restricts the spinal cord, and it's going to have an effect on all of the peripheral nerves that are coming out to innervate the muscles, as well as changing fascial tension and muscular tension through the body as well. So the more that we can think about that, each vertebrae has its own individual function, and each vertebrae should kind of follow on from the previous vertebrae, then, you know, that's how we're going to get optimal function. And it's really common for like one or two vertebrae to be restricted in an area, and that then has that flow and effect to the rest of the body. So, like when they're doing nose to toes and beyond, we want nose in front of pole, in front of neck, in front of sternum, and then all of the spinous processes of the thoracic and the lumbar are opening and lifting, and then we've got lift of the thoracic sling, lift of the abdominals, lift of the core, all the way back to the back feet. Like the whole body, and the whole body actually is involved in that exercise. It's not just about the abdominals, or it's not just about like how far they can reach. Like it's actually a whole body exercise. So that spinal alignment is super duper important. What else?
Um, well, thoracic sling and the abdominal lack of ability to engage. So if you have a reduction in the ability to use your thoracic sling. So we're talking here maybe a little bit more about function. So if your thoracic sling isn't able to give you the motion to come down towards your nose to toes, then you're going to be restricted in that direction. However, if you do your stretches within the range of motion, all of that is always going to, or not so much within the range of motion, but well, yes, within range of motion, but also keeping your alignment and keeping your, like you said, the spinal alignment. When you do that stretch, you're going to be allowing a symmetrical, so like left to right. If you go to the point where the horse offloads the leg, what you're going to do is you're going to have a mild twist, and then your thoracic sling is going to be asymmetrical in the way that you're being asked to mobilize. So you're also going to then have a twist through the rib cage, and the rib cage connection to the pelvis is very important with relationship to the abdominals. So if you've had a twist through the rib cage and your abdominals aren't engaging properly, then your stretch isn't going to be, like you said, if you have a stretch coming from the neck all the way back to the pelvis, each segment should be included within that. So if you've just disengaged a certain area, all that's happening is that you're putting too much force through another area. So the head and neck might be really bending now because that's an area that the horse is like, yeah, I can make up and I can reach for the carrot. But all of this other area that may be even more important for this horse hasn't been touched at all. And so you're not really getting the improvement that you'd like to see. And often there's a lot of brace that happens there too. So your core or your abdominals that we're talking about just disengage, and then they just hold, they end up just bracing, like you've just kind of braced your diaphragm, braced your abdominals. And whereas if you'd done well, you just would have had a very light motion being introduced by that stretch, just enough to bring in a little bit of engagement to ask the tissue to change with repetition and with time. So that's another thing that's happening in the body.
I think that a lot of times too, people mistake that brace for correct function, because often the horse can execute the movement and it looks like they've lifted through their back. Like it's a hard challenge to recognize because it looks like they're lifting through their core and their back, and they're doing it, but actually when you look at it, there's a lot of brace through, like the belly's like and the back's like eh. And so probably the easiest way to notice that is look at the back and think, does it look like it's kind of like curving upwards, or does it look like it's just kind of lifted as a straight line? Because if it looks like it's just lifted as a straight line, then it's probably braced. It should look like it's opened up in a rainbow, like it's all opened up in an upward curve. And if the belly also looks like it's like, if someone went to punch you in the stomach and you went, ugh, if it looks like that as well, then it's brace. And the horse generally, when there's all of that brace, they'll grab the treat and go back. So they make it quite like they're not happy to stay there. And usually there'll be another thing correlating with that, like they'll bend their front legs or, they'll shift. But if they've been trained to do it that way, then they might have been also trained to stop the other things. And so you've just got to train your eye to recognize the brace. That's, yeah.
And your best opportunity is making sure that you do the stretch well within their comfort and their individual range of motion. Because if you can, well, we just had an episode on the power of the breath and doing that exercise where you would encourage them to use their breath. I know you also teach that in the posture course, especially in level 2, like really getting good quality breathing motion for your abdominals and your diaphragm. And then you come to these mobilizations, you're in a really powerful position because even if it doesn't look like you have a huge, impressive stretch, all you need to be doing is getting a little bit of improvement each time. So if you are using a quality stretch that doesn't disengage this, offload that, or overdo, stretch or bend through the neck, then you are just going to slowly be getting improvement through that space. And the more mobilization you do, generally, the more comfort that you have sometimes as well. So when you're doing things well and doing them in a small way. So the more comfort you have, the easier it gets, and just becomes like a snowball going down a hill.
Yeah, and also like the other thing that happens when, horses start displaying these behaviors like the snatching the carrot and the losing interest and the leg bending and all of those things, and sometimes it's a cause of it is their awareness, like their body awareness or their limb awareness. And that's probably one of the first things you want to work on is the horse becoming more aware of themselves in the process. Like it's not an exercise, and this, I mean, creating a thinking horse in general that's aware of their body is, I cannot reiterate the value of that because they give you feedback, but they also they'll say, no, that's too far. Like they feel their body instead of just going through the motions to give you a response. And so with jelly, like I said, that's been a big focus is like, think about your body, think about your legs, think about the treat, think about me, think about the exercise. Don't get in the anxious state or the bracing state. Or so if your horse loses that body awareness, which can be a result of or cause of not being able to implement the mobilization correctly. That's something that you want to focus on. And if they have body awareness in these exercises, it can have such a good flow on effect to everything else that you do with them, even like safety and everything. We've talked a lot about that. So, yeah, super, super important. So, what tips would you give to people to kind of help them rectify these challenges?
Number one is just working on your powers of observation. So you usually have to practice that as a skill. And, if you are going to do a stretch where you're asking your horse to lift their back, for example, because we used that just before as an example, just watching each time, like, and being able to sort of step back and say, are you really lifting through your back? Are you really bracing through your abdominals? And look for the same thing repeatedly to get your eye in and see whether or not it's happening. Go and look at another horse doing the same exercise and see what the differences are between the two. And just improve your ability to observe those things. Like sometimes you have to take a step back. And just or film yourself so that you can look back later when you're not in the moment of juggling a carrot and an apple and trying to get it all done, so that you can have a look and say, oh, look, that does happen, or this does happen, or what is he doing with his back legs while we're working.
Yeah.
Definitely ensuring they have function. So by function we mean, is that motion available to the horse? So can the horse lift or move through this thoracic sling? Are their abdominal muscles able to turn on and hold more tension and then turn off and go back to their neutral position, as opposed to just being braced and not really having any ability to lengthen or contract? Is there spinal function? So can they say lift and flex through the back like what we we're talking about? And do they have spinal alignment just to start with, not even talking about in a stretch or in bend? Your lumbosacropelvic function, learning how to assess this. It's a little bit beyond the podcast episode, but we do go into that in the equine functional posture course. Understanding your structural function of the body is, just a total game changer. I would say recognizing the tries from the horse. So if they're going to give you a little attempt and that's all they can give you, then rewarding what you do get and appreciating it from them, because especially if you're starting from a position where it's hard for them.
Mm.
And going for quality, like you said at the very beginning, quality over quantity. It's not about how far you get in the stretch, it's about what the stretch looks like for the horse's body. What else sort of stands out? What
Yeah,
would you
I would
give?
say begin with body awareness and square balance stance. So if that's all you do in the first session, then that's all you do in the first session. Like you're just working on them being more balanced in their posture and rewarding them for that. Um, and just recognizing that can help horses a lot, like you recognizing and helping them find a balanced stance. Also, make sure that they're polite with the treats. So, if a horse is really treat obsessed, then you need to learn how to train them to not be treat obsessed, and that requires a lot of consistency from you. So you need a clear method for doing that. Um, and so that they're really clear on when they're going to get the treat and when they're not. And I think our biggest fault is that, and what we've touched on here is all the horses challenges, but actually there's a lot of challenges for ourselves. Like I find people's positions, people's pulling like when they're offering the treat and pulling it away can be very inconsistent. Our relaxation, our ability to move our feet, like to help the horse, like if we get stuck in a position, the horse gets stuck in a position. So, um, we need to be very mindful about our processes in using treats because I think we create a lot of problems with treats in our inconsistency. So that's super important. Um, Break it down. So, just go back to the start. Like, can I keep it straight to this point? Other legs in a good position. Like make it simpler, smaller, slower, clear, very clear. And make sure the treats aren't too high value. So sometimes if a horse is really just crazy treat obsessed with carrots, then you might use like lucerne cubes are really beneficial. Or I found some treats from Hudson Tote that are low sugar value, or something like that's a lower value treat. So they're not like, yeah, chocolate, chocolate, chocolate. They're like, yeah, I want that, but it's all good if I don't get it. And then do the functional posture course because we go through all of these exercises and we help you because you video yourselves and we actually you get to watch everyone else as well. And so you know, sometimes you think you're doing it right, and so many times people are like, yeah, I watched the video, I can see, that I could have done this better or that better, or where my horse got bracy or whatever. So there's a value in that aspect of it, but then there's a value in watching other people because every horse has different challenges. Like, well, often I mean, gosh, we can have 40 people on a call or whatever, and like everyone has a different challenge. So
Yeah,
you learn so much from like watching everyone else in the course. Um, and we go through each individual exercise to, help you in that application of those mobilizations. So,
definitely. And if you want to learn a little bit more about mobilizations and how they might be different from activations or lengthenings, then go and listen to our mobilizations, activations, and lengthening episode, which is sort of in the first 20, definitely. First 20 episodes. I can't remember exactly what number, but that has a lot of
yeah.
value in it as well.
And we've also done one on the belly lift, and we've also
Yes.
done two on recognizing core strength, which is also really valuable episodes that complement this.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, before we finish today, I just wanted to share something with you that we've been sharing the last couple of podcasts. The Equine Functional Posture podcast has grown into a really special space, one that's focused on education, welfare, curiosity, and a deeper understanding of the horse. As the podcast continues to grow, we're opening the door to a small number of aligned sponsors who share these values and genuinely support horse well-being, education, and ethical practices. If you're a brand, a practitioner, or a business who feels connected to this work and like to be a a sponsor, then you're very welcome to reach out and you'll find the details in the show notes. Thank you for joining myself, Dr. Raquel Butler and Sophie Vanderberg in today's podcast. Enjoy your horse time. Please subscribe to the Equine Functional Posture podcast so you don't miss our weekly episodes, and give us a 5-star rating so we can share more valuable insights. And reach out with any listener requests for any topics that you'd like to hear us talk about.
We'll see you in the next exciting episode.